Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode with the Journey Within. We have the lovely Shari Leid with us today, and I feel so honored. We are recording on her birthday. I know this is not going to air for another month, but guys, this is such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Shari is an incredible badass. She is an author, cancer survivor, like overall badass woman. And I cannot wait to chat with her today and let her bring us through her journey within. Take it away, Shari. Introduce yourself. Tell us all about yourself.
Thank you. Well, I can't think of a better way to spend my birthday afternoon. I'm really excited to speak with you. I'm from the Seattle area and I love the intro. I'll just add, I work as a life coach for women. And as you mentioned, I just published my first book. And I'm a recovering attorney. I used to practice law, but now I'm doing something a little bit more on the happy side.
That is so incredible. And I would love to know, because I do know you started off, that's such a radical change that you did. Going from, I feel like attorneys can be very type A and very just, this is the way that we're going to go. And you totally shifted to a different space. Like you're in the health and wellness as a life coach, empowering women. And we'll get into your book in a little bit, but can you kind of take us through that journey? What kind of inspired that pivot and everything?
Sure. Well, I practiced law for over a decade and I was a litigator. So I started out as a criminal prosecutor, moved to the civil defense side. And then we happened to adopt a little girl from China, came home and found out I was pregnant. So we had two babies in 1 year. but but eventually it came apparent that our daughter had some special needs. She's fine now, but she had some needs at the time that needed one of us to stay home, either my husband or I. So I stayed home for several years. And as I got older, I finally got to the point where I could go back out to work. But this time I got to actually decide what I wanted to do as opposed to, making a decision kind of based on what I thought would look good or what other people expected of me.
Which is insane. I think that's one of the biggest things that drew me to you. As women, we are always doing what not just women, we do this, everyone. But I feel like as women, it's even more, you're supposed to do this. And there's all these roles you're supposed to fulfill. And I can't imagine literally going from that to, oh my God, we're going to adopt a baby. Oh, I'm pregnant. And now we have two kiddos. I'm staying home all day. Now it's like, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to see what I really want. Was there like a self-discovery journey within that?
Definitely, it's quite a process and it didn't happen immediately when I started staying home. Actually, it was kind of a shock to stay home since it wasn't so well planned. And all of a sudden I realized all of my identity had been wrapped up in being an attorney. And, so all of a sudden I had to just discover my own identity, especially meeting new people. And the first question is, what do you do? So it was a process and really, it didn't start for me. So now today, my birthday, I'm 51 years old today. And I think this process really started for me in my 40s. And as you mentioned earlier, I am a breast cancer survivor, and that was a diagnosis I received at age 47. And that, I was kind of already on this journey, but that kicked it into high gear for me to really recognize that this life is a gift and I don't want to waste it doing things that other people expect me to do. I want to do things that I am here to do.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So it was very kind of dark night in the soul when you got the diagnosis, and it really forced you to kind of look inward and where you were in your life at that moment.
Yes, definitely. When I received the diagnosis, you never know what your reaction is going to be when certain things happen to you. And I always thought about that because I know different friends who've had cancer diagnoses and they've reacted differently. And I've always said, I don't know how I would react. My first reaction when I heard that, other than dropping to my knees in shock was, this is here for a purpose. What is the purpose here? And that really, and I started journaling, and that really propelled me forward.
Wow. Were you always that insightful with anything that kind of came like, what is the purpose of this?
I'd like to say yes, but I don't think I was. Honestly, I started really working on letting go of ego in my 40s, and I'm so glad I did before I received this diagnosis, because I don't think I could have gotten to that point so quickly if I hadn't already been trying to do some work on myself earlier. Um,
No, yeah, definitely. I could see that. I feel like ego plays such a big role in
mhm,
not only the decisions that we make, but how we're showing up, the conversations that we have. And it can keep us very small and kind of in this little shell where we don't have to kind of look out and do anything that scares us. So it's incredible that you took such a traumatic time,
mhm,
literally diagnosed. And I feel like you're a woman, it's your breast, like that's such,
mhm,
you're a mother, like there's so much there. And
mhm.
taking that and being able to see, wow, what's the purpose? What can I learn from this? How can I grow and evolve? And that's incredible. Do you think that that also shifted what you've been able to kind of portray for your daughters?
Um, it I hope it has, because, my daughters I have a daughter and a son. My daughter, we
Oh,
adopted, is, 20. She'll be 21,
oh my
next
God.
year, and my
Oh,
son's 18. So I hope so, because those are tough ages. They can be tough ages. And then a lot of things I feel like I love that you're sharing these things, and I'm guessing that much of your audience is younger than me, and which I think is great, because I didn't get these messages when I was younger. And it's never too late, but boy, how great if you can not waste a good portion of your life trying to um, be stuck actually in that ego and that judgment piece that we were talking about.
yeah, no, it is. I think for me, a lot of it is my mom. She, I was sick for the majority of my 20s,
Mhm,
and now we've moved out of that. And I realized for her, I think it was like last year, her sense of identity was very tied to my brother and me.
mhm,
And once I was kind of like, I'm good, you don't need to be,
mhm,
mom, doctor, nurse all the time. You can just go back to being mom.
mhm,
She kind of felt that emptiness on a deeper level. And I saw her kind of going through these like little episodes that where she would be good and then she would dip into this sort of not depression, but
mhm,
she was a little lower. And I started to realize, wow, why is it that we wait until something
mhm,
happens for us to really realize, okay, am I living a life that I am genuinely happy with? And I started to kind of ask her, I'm like, Mom, where does your sense of self come from? You guys? And I'm like, no, 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 Mom.
mhm,
Like, where does your sense of self really come from? And having those conversations with her and with other people, I started to realize there's a lot of information out there, but we don't listen to it because we're so involved in our own thing that we don't realize
mhm,
that person over there is going through something similar and I can learn something from them. And that's what really inspired the journey
mhm,
within. It's really
mhm.
taking people with the journey within. It's not always these sunshine, like you didn't just wake up one day, write your book and have it published.
Right.
Like there's a lot that went behind closed doors. And I want to show people that you can take something quote unquote negative or that's not with this pretty bow on it and really grow and learn about yourself and almost come home to yourself through that experience.
Yes, I saw on your Facebook you wrote something, and I'm not going to quote you because I don't remember the exact quote, but it's basically you said that a lot of times it's really about the journey and not necessarily the view. It's the journey, and that's why I tell my coaching clients too, that when we set goals, or now New Year's resolutions, make sure that you know how you want that to feel when you reach it, because that's how you should feel every day on your way to getting there. And just pointing out that yes, it's the journey that really matters here, and not necessarily the end point, but we learn so much through everything we go through.
We really, really do. I'm really late on the book. I read the book Wild
Mm,
about 2 weeks ago.
yeah.
And that hit me even more because I started to realize when I'm hiking, I'm so
Mm,
focused on where I'm going. I don't actually enjoy the 2 or 3 or 4 miles to get there. And the book, I don't know if you've read it, but she gets to her destination and it's probably like 3 paragraphs and the entire book was the journey. And I started to
yeah.
realize no book that you read do they focus on the ending or the end goal. They
Mhm.
focus on the journey. And that really started to kind of put in more of, why are we always so focused on the end game? Why can't we learn that dance, that the
Yes.
journey is actually, there's a lot there. Like, and that's going to bring me into your book, because
Yeah.
that was something that I like. your book your book is just like,
Uh-huh.
it's literally, I feel like it's what every girlfriend needs, what every woman, every girl needs.
Thank you. Yeah, I the book kind of came about organically. It wasn't something that I was planning. It was a little project of my own. And because of the response to the project, which was between ages 49 to 50, I should go back just a little bit. What sparked this idea is I went to a girlfriend's memorial service.
I'm so
And
sorry.
thank you. There were people that stood up. Some I knew, some I didn't, but they all said these wonderful things about this woman and how she affected their lives. And this was great, but she was no longer here. So I decided that I'm going to sit down with, this was between my 49th and 50th birthday. I'm going to sit down with 50 women, some that were lifelong friends, others that I may have just met once or twice, but they stood out to me, and I was going to sit down with them, this before COVID, so this is all in person, um, and tell them, for the purpose of telling them what life lesson I've learned from them, with the idea that everyone we meet is both our teacher and our student. uh, and and that's what I did, this over a course of a year. And as people start, I was posting this on Facebook because I'm an oversharer, and so I was posting it, and people started to respond, and asking me, how did I do this? What's the framework for this? And that's when I realized, well, let me put this in a bigger format, because I really want to encourage others to do this, to set aside time to meet one-on-one with their friends. It doesn't have to be 50, it could be 5 or 10, um, but to set aside that time, because we don't take the time to tell each other what we've learned from one another.
That, for me, when I started reading your book, it really spoke a lot to me, because I realized this year what you were talking about. You learned it at a memorial. I waited until 2020 to realize this,
Mm,
that I was like, wow, we don't ever truly tell people how much
mhm,
they mean to us or the impact that they have until they're no longer there. And then we're like, oh, I miss them. Or, we start realizing all of this. And my question for you was, when you started this, because there were some people that you knew and some people, what was the most, because I'm sure everyone was just like, oh my God, you're making them feel so seen and heard.
mhm.
What was like the one conversation or like the one interaction that you were like, I could have never expected this, like, blowout of, and I'm not saying it was negative. I'm just like,
Mm,
because that is such a powerful thing. Women,
yeah.
especially, we're not taught, sadly, to bring each other up.
Mhm,
Sadly, we're taught that if there's another woman doing that, then she's going to take your job, or she's going to, like, it's
mhm.
this competition. And what you're bringing forward is the complete opposite. So I'm just curious as to how that all played out, and just
Yeah, well, I can guarantee that every woman I met with remembers that moment in that day because, like you said, we don't have these conversations with each other. And because this wasn't going to be a book until I knew towards the end of the 50, it was turning into a book. In the beginning, I had no idea. So we were meeting for like happy hour. And,
Oh my God, that's
you
awesome.
so people were a lot less guarded than after when they found out this was going to be a book. Um, but it's interesting because it is hard to receive a compliment, and a few of the women I met with went in turn to do the same thing, and some of them chose me as the recipient of what I taught them, and it was hard being on that receiving end without I had to stop myself from interrupting or throwing a compliment back. But I have to tell you, there wasn't a negative. I was surprised because when it did become a book and I contacted everyone, um, everyone agreed that I could use the story in the book. So that was I really appreciate that. And during COVID, I did this a second time, but through Zoom. And
Oh
this
my
time, though,
God.
I asked the question, what is your mess that became your message? And this one surprised me because the a lot of these women, like I had known since my 20s, and I didn't realize some of the quote unquote messes that they're going through. In particular, I had several women, well, several, maybe about five, that told me that they suffer from daily anxiety and depression. I had no idea, absolutely no idea, and I was floored. And I have a family member who suffers from the same thing. So these conversations, they were life changing for me this second round, and it actually made me um, better understand this person in my family that I love.
That's so beautiful.
Mm.
Wow. So on both ends, you felt like it was just you were learning when you were.
Absolutely. It was like free therapy, you know, especially when I, especially when I did it on Zoom, because then I didn't have to buy anybody happy hour
Right?
drinks. But yes, absolutely. And it just floors me how much I could still learn from these friends, especially the women that I've been close to. How could I have not known that they suffer every day, from anxiety when they wake up in the morning, or depression? How could I not know that? But I don't, I didn't. So yeah, constantly just learning through friends in these deep conversations.
That's so incredible. Do you feel like doing like when it before it was a book, but obviously the whole journey, it kind of changed the way that you interact with people and the way that you communicate with people?
Yes. What it's done is I notice now I automatically, when I meet someone new, especially, I automatically think, okay, what am I here learning? Like if I believe that everyone's my teacher and my student, what am I learning? And so once I put that kind of focus, it takes the pressure off of me, because it could be nerve wracking to meet somebody new. Um, and also well, here's an example. A big lesson, not even actually meeting someone, is a woman I spoke to in one of these Zoom dates. Her son had been on the streets. He was a drug addict. But talking to her about this, and she had a mess to messages with that, made me, because Seattle has a huge it's a homeless crisis we have in Seattle. And I didn't realize until speaking to her that I had lost a piece of my humanity when it came to the homeless. And I had gotten into this, oh, Seattle's gone downhill kind of place,
Mhm.
and I forgot to see the people. But talking to her made my interaction with the homeless people that I see entirely different. She After our conversation, I now carry a bag that I can give to somebody when I see them.
Oh, that's so nice.
And I'm now making eye contact, and I remember the faces with their gratitude. It's entirely life changing. So yes, the interactions I've had with people have changed in so many ways because of these conversations.
That's so beautiful. And I love that you're able to recognize that you had kind of lost a certain part of your own humanity and now it shifted with all of that. And I I feel like that's the biggest lesson that we can all learn. It's okay that in the journey you notice things about yourself that you might not be happy with, but that's where you get to kind of be like, okay, well, do I want to continue to show up this way, or do I want to kind of pivot into a different way of coming about? And I can relate to you a lot with the homelessness. There's a big homelessness. I mean, in the U.S. in general, there's
Hmm.
a big
Yeah.
problem with that, and I think sometimes we forget that they're human,
Hmm.
and it's easier to just place judgment right off the bat. But when you really start to talk to them, they're
Hmm.
not gonna hurt, I mean, if they're on drugs, it's gonna be a little bit different because there's something
Yeah.
else in there.
Hmm.
But the majority of the time, they just want to be seen. They just want to be seen and heard. And you mentioned kind of carrying a bag for them. I've been doing that for a few years.
Hmm.
I had someone share something, and it kind of, I was like, oh, I like that. I'm gonna start doing that. And I remember once I was like, oh no, I don't have anything with me. And I went into my wallet to see if I had some cash or something. And the guy looks at me, he's like, no, it's okay. Thank you for just stopping and recognizing me. And I'm like, thank you for
Yeah.
being so positive when you don't have anything. And I saw him again the next time that I was at the stop sign. And I put the window, I'm like, hey, I hope you're having a great day. And I realized that little thing
Hmm.
changed everything, because we sometimes only interact with people based on what we're going to get. And when you're able to kind
Hmm.
of realize it's all about what you can give, and it's not about this, it's all
Hmm.
about that energy, interaction,
Hmm.
and coming from a place of love, or wherever you're coming from, that has more weight than me physically giving you something. And that was the message I got from your book. It's not necessarily that you're buying or doing these grand things. It's just saying, hey, you matter, you made an impact in my life, and I wanted to take the time to share that with you, because man, people don't do that.
We
And
don't.
especially
And
for women, we,
yeah.
we, we don't, like, how many times do you call your friend and you're like, hey, you're awesome, I just wanted to let you know that, bye.
Right. Yeah, no, it's remarkable. And then when you start doing this, so I shared on Facebook, and I think that it doesn't, if people are doing this, I think in some way you have to capture that meeting. It could be a little journal note. It could be a picture. You don't have to be an oversharer like me and share it on social media, but that piece of capturing it somehow was the most important piece for me, in the sense that it allowed me to reflect on the meetings. And once I reflected on all these meetings, I mean, 50 women of all different ages, ethnicities, income levels, education levels, and all these women, when I start to see that, how they've come into my life, it's really impossible not to live in gratitude, for lack of better words, and be appreciative for all these experiences that we don't necessarily notice that we're having, because life goes by so quickly.
Yeah, no, definitely. Do you think that now you're more present when you're kind of talking with people because of that entire experience?
Yes, I definitely am. I think before this, I was probably a lot more in my head with my stuff, kind of like, well, what am I going to say? How am I going to make this fun? As opposed to now, I really do focus on the person so much better. It's a practice. It's something that, as women, sometimes I think maybe our teenagers, our 20s, we get in the habit of focusing on ourselves and how we need to present to either be accepted or looked at in a certain way. And I think it's really hard now with social media. So it takes practice to get back into what we were as kids. And as kids, we just played, and we looked
Yeah.
at the other person, and we sought a playmate, someone to have fun with. And somewhere along the line, we tend to lose that. So it takes practice to get back into that. But it took 50 dates.
Wow. You should turn this into, I was like literally thinking, I'm like, she should turn this into into a movie. Like, how great would this be?
Yeah.
No, I think you're almost calling the sisterhood back,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
we have been so, especially right now, 2020, when we feel so isolated and so disconnected,
Mm-hmm.
you've brought it back in a sense where we don't need to. Like, yeah, it'd be great if I can take you out for a drink or for coffee or whatever, but we don't need to. Like you said, you started doing this with Zoom again, and
Mm-hmm.
you can start this connection, and it's almost like, because you said you did it with someone and then they went and they found, so it's like you're starting this little ripple effect. And if literally everyone could just do it to one person,
Mm-hmm.
we would get to everyone, because it's yeah, it's just like that ripple effect of feeling seen and heard, and
Mm-hmm.
feeling appreciated.
Yes, definitely. And when somebody tells me that they're doing this, and some people have made it in their own way. One woman, it's more comfortable for her to write notes and drop off gift bags. Now, I do appreciate she's putting my book in there when she drops it
Okay, I
off.
was like, I mean, I hope there's like something.
But no, but and another woman is taking walks with people because it's more comfortable for her to walk side by side and talk about these things. Another woman is she has a lot of male mentors, so she's meeting with men. So people are making this their own, but with the same spirit that we have these discussions with each other. And I really believe that everyone's ultimate goal in life is happiness. It's not a title or possessions. And there's such a high, if not the highest correlation with happiness is your relationships, whether that be with your community, your friends, your family. So doing this, I believe, can just only increase that level of happiness that we're all trying to seek.
Definitely. No, it's really like such, I can almost see this turning into a movement. Like, I can literally, I'm going to email you in 6 to 8 months and be like, hey, do you remember when you were just kind of talking about this and now everyone's doing this? It's like
Yeah.
hashtag, literally, that's where we're at, because this is
Yeah.
the
Well,
time.
let's hope so.
Cross fingers.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I totally stalked you on Instagram and
I
all of
know.
that. And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
literally looking at your Instagram, I'm like, so because we started this, and I'll kind of, everyone on here knows that I love to astrologically profile people.
Mm,
And before I knew that you were a Sagittarius, I was like,
yeah.
I'm like, she has to have like Leo in her. She's so like
Mm,
in her worth and just so, but not in a, just in a very, just in her
mm,
own worth way. And I kept thinking, I'm like, she went from being a lawyer to this. Or was she always like this? But you're so free. And why I bring this up is women have this, and I've dealt with this, we're too much, we're too sensitive, we're
mm.
asking for too much. Like this, and you seem very in your worth, non-apologetic, like zero F's, this is me, take me as I am. And I'm just like, how were you always like that? Did kind of going through this journey bring you there? Was it you're watching your kids grow up? Like, I'm just curious.
All of the above. I think I naturally kind of had some of this, whatever this is in me, but it was quashed a bit, in my 20s and 30s as I was trying to find identity and fit in and belong. It wasn't until really, I have to say 40s that I really started to come into my own. And I actually the work I did before I was 47 was through my own process of trying to let go of judgment, because I really felt that that's what was holding me back from being able to express who I am. The fear that people were going to talk badly about me, or Well, I guess that was most of it, but yeah, it was a process. And if I always say, if women could get to this younger, I tell my daughter who's in her 20s that, or she's 20, that some of the process that she's working through now. I mean, we're both adopted, and I see her working through a lot of things that I had going on, and I always say, man, you're doing this so much earlier than me. So don't worry about it. You're gonna get.
Oh, that's so beautiful, though. You being able to kind of notice all of that and encourage her and
Mhm,
just let her know she's not going through this alone, which is so
mhm.
beautiful. Do you think if there's anything that you can tell yourself when you were in your 20s and you were kind of trying to find yourself in all of this, what would you kind of say if you could go back?
I think I would tell myself that I was enough. Um, when I think about myself in my 20s and 30s, I I I see somebody that, one, that was wounded. I think I had a lot of wounds that I was carrying, and I feel like I see somebody who was always trying to prove herself to people and always trying to prove that she belonged. And I don't know how much of that, I know you talk about trauma a lot with the work you do,
Yeah.
and I don't know how much of that comes from adoption trauma. Because, so when you're adopted as a kid, a lot of times you're explaining to strangers why you belong to a family, and you're justifying your worth in a family. So I don't know what comes from, adoption or anything else. But yeah, in my 20s and 30s, I think I would tell me that I am enough. I don't need to be anything but me.
It's funny because I ask this all the time to people, and it's always around that. It's
Mm.
just being okay with where you're at, and I'm genuinely intrigued with how is it that we can recognize all of this years later, but when we're in it, it's so hard to give ourselves that permission to be content with who we are, but at the same time, set goals without having to judge where you're at right now. Because I feel like, and that was something where I was actually going to pivot into. I know you're a life coach, and you work with a lot of women to set these really great transformational goals. But I see it even with my clients. It's like you're so focused, and that was me for a very long time. You're so focused on this that you can't notice where you're at, and because you're so focused on this, it's almost like you're shaming where you're at right now.
Yes, it's the same thing that you were describing earlier about the journey being so important as opposed to being. I mean, I took swimming lessons. I'm a late bloomer and everything. I took swimming lessons at age 40. So,
Wait, what? No
yeah,
way. That
adult
is
swim lessons.
empowering, though.
One day I'll tell you the stories, and they're hilarious. If you ever have seen an adult learn how to swim, it's like seeing an adult learn how to ski. It's hilarious. But I remember my swim instructor said the problem with adults is they don't forget that they're learning to swim. And if you focus on where the edge of the pool is and not where you're at, you're going to drown. So you need to stay focused at where you're at. And that just her saying that reminded me of so many times in life. And I think about that a lot. I need to stop focusing on something that's not even here yet, something that's not a reality, whatever worry it is, and really focus and enjoy and take in where I'm at. Otherwise, like you were saying, you miss this whole piece of yourself because you're not even here.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I was actually going to say, do you feel like a lot of shadow work like played a role in that? Because you haven't used it, but what we've been talking about has a lot of been of to an illusion of accepting all aspects of ourselves, not this is good, this is bad, and that type of modality. Did that play a big role in your inner journey before 47?
Yeah, I started to learn to have a bit more grace with myself. And that's kind of what I talk to my clients about too, is when they're making resolutions or goals to, in the process, have grace with yourself. Because a lot of times we tend to be all or nothing. And we mess up and it's like, oh, we can't do it, as opposed to saying, okay, what happened? Can we just shift something a little bit here? So learning to have grace with myself has been a big growth point for me.
Oh, wow. I mean, I think we all could add a little bit more grace into our
Mhm.
lives. Can you talk more about how you were able to implement that into your life and get to a place where you're not being so critical and judgmental? Because we can. I always say we are our biggest critics. Everyone else is just mirroring what we're not looking at.
Yeah, yeah. I, I think about grace a lot when actually it comes up for me usually when I'm mad at somebody else or I get upset, and I step back and I think because my natural response is I don't get angry often, but I'm one of those people that if I do get angry, maybe it's because I don't get angry often, I'm like
Mm.
I blow up, and so I lose the grace. And so I've been really working, especially with family, to, if I feel myself get to that point, one, I think, okay, how am I going to deal with this with grace? And then
Mm.
that kind of is my jumping pad to, because it brings me down a little bit. For some reason, that word will bring me down a little bit, down in anger level. And it, and then I start thinking, okay, what is it triggers, what is my role in this?
Mm.
And then that grace piece comes in where I see, okay, I could have grace with them because now I'm seeing my role in this, and let me have grace with myself too. So that's actually where I really think about it, is when I could feel myself getting agitated or upset about some situation. That word grace usually kind of hopefully brings me back a little bit.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna have to implement that. I noticed that I'm not like you. My brother's like you. He doesn't get mad easily. It takes a lot. I'm very I'm like I'm just always like ah! um, but with my mom, I have to say she's someone that I need to. We're so similar. It's literally
Mm.
that. It's so I catch myself sometimes where I'm like telling her like you need to, and then 10 minutes will pass and I'm like, no, why, uh, like no. And I'm trying to find a way to, so that's why I was like curious. I'm like, but I'm gonna try
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna be like, how can I shift from this to a more gracious style of
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. It's hard when you're in that moment. And what I realize too is when I get upset about something, especially with family or raising kids, when I get upset about something, it usually is because they're not following what my idea of their journey should be. And that's one thing as a parent, you were talking earlier about your mom and experiencing empty nest syndrome. Uh, and the one thing that I've had to learn to do as a parent, I tell my friends that have younger kids, and that I had to learn how to separate my journey from my kids' journey
Mm.
and recognize that I don't own them, but I'm here to guide them. And I find that once I'm able to do that, I don't have as many of those "you need to do this" kind of moments that you're
Yeah,
describing.
that's so beautiful though. And I love what you just said. We don't own them. We're just here to guide them. Because I mean, this can be my mom being super Hispanic, but it was like, I gave birth to you. You have to do what I say. and and I see that play out a lot. And I feel like now there is this movement where people are realizing like what you just said. It's no one is ours. Even like a relationship, your friends, like I was having this conversation with someone. I think you with having clients, this might resonate.
Mhm.
When a friend comes to tell you, hey, I got a job in New Zealand, you're like, oh my God, that's so amazing, great for
Mhm.
you. But if your partner or your boyfriend or your husband, insert whatever, girlfriend, whatever it is, comes and they're like, hey, I got a job in New Zealand, you're like, what about me? So what
Mhm.
does this mean for us? Like, you don't go into that, hey, how exciting. So depending on the relationship, you have this kind of like, no, this is mine, instead of we're we're just crossing paths, or maybe we're meant to, you know what I mean? Like that kind of guidance
Yes.
thing. So it goes with so much to every relationship. Like we're genuinely here to guide people, not to,
Mhm.
you got to do it my way, because and that's my tendency of, I know more, why don't you just do this what I'm telling you to do?
Yeah, I love that example that you gave of how we're different with the people in our lives. One of the mess to messages conversations I had, this
Yeah.
woman explained that she had a difficult relationship with her dad, who was an addict and wasn't present with her. So she had a painful childhood. But part of her message was that when she took away the title of dad, then she saw him as somebody who had been abused himself, someone who had a very difficult life, somebody that was a survivor, because the word dad put in all these expectations and all these ideas that of who he should be. And I thought that was really powerful, because it's true, because we have these ideas of what these roles or the titles that we give, our partner, our friend, and our child. And sometimes, yeah, if we take away these titles, we can have more grace.
That I'm just so, that had to take a lot for her to realize and come to terms with
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
You need to get this on Zoom, and like, not on Zoom. You need to get all these videos from Zoom and like put them out. This is gold. I'm like, I would listen. I would pay for to watch that. That's a
Yeah,
better
that's
movie than what Netflix has right now.
yeah, I've gone through all the Netflix movies and TV shows this year. I think I've watched so many first seasons of a Netflix original this year.
I laugh because I want to say March, April, May. Yeah. Everyone I talked to, I was like, hey, what show do you recommend?
Mhm.
And after that, I was just like, nope. I'm like on YouTube watching podcasts and things. And it's, to me, and I'm not trying to, hey, if you want to watch Netflix and it
Yeah.
goes for you, good for you. But I hit a wall where I'm not someone that watches that much
Mhm.
TV. And now it was all, and it was just like, no, you're turning my brain into mush. Like it just made me realize, I'm like, no. So I'm shifting into more, they don't even have to be educational. It's just, what can I learn from this? And sadly, watching a princess marry a knight in some made up land isn't going to teach me anything other than the same fairy tale that I've been hearing about since I was little. So I
Yeah.
really like, I just, what you're doing, I think, is incredible. The book itself is such a powerful testimony to when a woman does something, like
Mhm.
genuinely, because I'm not trying to make anything bad about men, but a man would never start something this vulnerable and this open, versus if a woman starts it, anyone feels like they can jump in, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's my hope. When I was writing this, my hope was, I like pinned, I got off the internet a picture of a woman that I didn't know, and it's not creepy. I put it on a bulletin board because I'm like, I'm just writing to one person in my mind. I'm like, if I can change this one person's life by writing this book, and this person tells somebody else what that person meant to her, then my job's done. And so that's been my goal from day one, that if this book can change the way somebody interacts with another person in their life and makes their life better, then, and so I'm so happy when people do, more people are doing this. It's the best gift.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I was actually thinking of grabbing a few girlfriends and having them all like get on Zoom and literally recording this and just being like, let's get a conversation going. Because
Mhm.
while it's amazing when I get to talk to authors and, different healers, it's beautiful and I love it. But I also know that on some level, people are like, well, it's different for them. Like we come up with all
Mhm.
these like narratives. And the whole point of this was stop putting people up on pedestals. Like that's my biggest thing. You're putting someone up on a pedestal because everything that you see in them are aspects of yourself you just haven't,
Mhm.
you know, woken up to them yet. But when you put someone on a pedestal, it makes it so that you're here and they're there, and it's always
Mhm.
going to be this, you're here and you're here. And I really want to show people like your story hits to so many women, like
Mhm.
so many women, because we can grab like literally random people on the street and just be like, hey, come here, you're a woman, come here. Let's grab 300 women and have
Mhm.
them all here. And it's like, put your hand up if you're in a job just because you thought this was what you were supposed to do, or you're in a
Mhm.
marriage because this is what you were supposed to do, or you got married and had kids because that is what you're supposed to do. And sadly, you know, this is when you have people that leave their marriages and
Mhm.
walk out on a kid and they're like all of these things. And it's because we're not being taught and motivated and inspired to follow our dreams and
Mhm.
what genuinely is going to make you happy. So for me, like I was just like talking to you was, yeah, I'm 30. I can't relate to a lot of the things because I'm like, I don't have kids. Not planning on having kids anytime soon. I will say I do want to adopt. So that's one thing I can say. But there's a lot of things I can't relate to that you're going through, but I can on a lot of ways. My family is Hispanic, and it was this, we came to the US so you could have a better life. So even though they weren't telling me you need to do this, it was like,
Mhm.
oh man, like I need to make all of your hard work and struggle worth it.
Right.
You know, and the only time that those are like the right ones are you're a doctor, you're a lawyer,
Mhm.
you're like these big names. And where I was going to go with this is how did you deal with, or did it come up, imposter syndrome? Because you're literally going from a career that is socially acceptable by
Mhm.
everyone,
Mhm.
and not trying to dismiss life coaching because I do trauma work, so it's not even
Yeah.
that, but quote unquote, where you don't have a real title, where you don't have a real career. How did that, like, how was that journey to, yeah,
Mhm.
like with your ego and all of that?
Yeah, well, giving up. So I do still have my law license, but that's only because if something really bad happens and I need to practice law, it's easy to keep. But actually, so the title doesn't. It's not a big thing to me anymore. But when I did stop practicing, that was huge. But the imposter syndrome happened while I was practicing, not after I quit.
Really?
Because honestly, it wasn't the best field for me, even though I was in there as a litigator for over a decade. It wasn't. I chose a career based on what I thought I could make income wise, how what I thought was prestigious. Truthfully, if I had a choice going into college, I would have instead gone into hair and makeup. I loved hair and makeup, as a teenager, and that would have been. But it never even crossed my mind that I could do anything different but go to a 4-year school. And even going to college, I knew that I had to go beyond my bachelor's degree. No one specifically sat me down and said that, but I just somehow knew that. So that imposter syndrome was really my first. I practiced law till my late 30s, my first half of adulthood. I was there for a while. I would play Gloria Gaynor's song "I Will Survive" on my way to work. That was my morning.
No
That
way.
that was my morning theme song. I mean, how sad is that?
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
so I was living, I was living from the outside a really good life, but on the inside, I was surviving and not thriving. Despite what I was doing career wise and advancing career wise, it was survival. It wasn't thriving. now switching over to a life coach, I think at this age in my 40s, it was easier. I wouldn't have been able to do it back when I stopped law. I wasn't ready. I needed to go through a process of trying to get to being okay with just me. We used to say when people asked what you do, I start to say nothing, which, I then later realized that's not funny. I'm devaluating myself. Um, so by the time I became a life coach, I had gone through that process of being comfortable with who I am and saying who I am. And now, because I really feel that I have a purpose here, and I wake up so excited to write, to talk to my clients. I absolutely love my job. It feels like a part of me. I work 7 days a week, but it's by choice because I really enjoy it. Uh, so, so the imposter syndrome, it doesn't exist now. I've never in my life at age 51, I've never in my life had felt so in line with what I do on a daily basis with what I feel inside.
Oh, that is so beautiful. That is incredible. I'm so happy for you, like genuinely
Thank you.
happy for you. No,
Yeah.
I can't imagine like literally practicing something for so long and knowing that you're not happy, but now you have something that makes you so happy. Was
Mhm.
there a lot of ego when you did start? Because obviously you mentioned it was the prestige and the income. Did a lot
Mhm.
of ego come up when you stopped practicing? It's like knowing, oh man, this income is not
Mhm.
here anymore. The prestige of I'm not a lawyer anymore, and that type of thing.
Yeah, where was my value? I had no idea. My value was all based on external factors. And so where does that value come from, internally, especially at the time I was a mom? Well, what value does that have in society? I mean, realistically, I mean, obviously it has value, but when you go out to a dinner party or a social event, there's not a lot of value placed on being a mom. And so I had to figure out, and I realized it's not something I was taught as a child to find value from inside.
Ah, wow. So that was a really interesting journey on all on your own.
It was because, as kids, we end up, especially with the way our school system works, we end up learning how to value ourselves with external factors, whether it's grades, sports, socialization, with different cliques. And we don't learn how to value ourselves, internally value ourselves. And man, you're lucky if you have an older person that's able to guide you through that.
See, but now you're being that for literally everyone, which is so beautiful. Have you and your daughter had any conversations like based on that? Because obviously, well, I don't want to say obviously, if
Mhm.
you had to kind of go inward and start to look at where did you place value, I'm sure that that had to affect both of your kids at some point when they had to kind of realize, oh man, look, like maybe I shouldn't be placing value on what I do, or have they not hit that place yet?
No, they have, and I apologize. That's my work phone. I don't know if you can hear it in the background. I have it like far away, but it's not that far. Um, my, sorry.
You're totally fine.
Um, yes, my daughter and I have a lot of these conversations right now. Because she is 20, and she was adopted under similar circumstances where we were both abandoned at birth. So both of us actually, we have different countries. I'm adopted from Korea, she's adopted from China, but we were both found in, if the records are correct, we were both found in cardboard boxes behind buildings, government buildings. So we share a similar story, even though from different countries. And so she's going through her own process of finding identity when you don't have that birth identity. You don't have a connection to your parents or anything to look to. You don't realize how often that comes up in life, where you got this from your dad, you got this from your mom, your grandfather's like that. But it comes up a lot, and you don't have those anchors to even look at. It's a struggle, and I don't know if it's more of a struggle for adopted kids, because I know biological, children from same parents have identity issues too. But we definitely have these conversations now, and she obviously has to figure out her own journey with it. But I just hope that me being open and sharing mine, one, allows her to feel comfortable talking to me, and two, maybe um, helps her kind of think through her own process.
Wow. Do you ever feel like you guys were meant to like find each other? Like
Absolutely. I
this is
mean,
me going
what?
like really out there,
Yeah,
but I'm just because what
yeah,
are the
absolutely.
odds?
Yeah, what are the chances that both of us, would be in those? I mean, to bring two of us from two different countries
Yeah.
to, both abandoned together here in the U.S., there has to be a lot at work to get
Yeah.
there.
Wow. It's interesting that this came up when I was, I want to say like I was probably like 7 or 8. Um, like eight or 9. I was like, yeah. I read a lot as a kid, and I was always intrigued by different cultures. So like very much about like the Asian and the Middle Eastern. I think it's just so
Mm-hmm.
different from mine that I was just like, oh, this is so interesting. And I read a book somewhere that said that like in China specifically,
Mm-hmm.
they would kill or like throw away the
Mm-hmm.
little girls because they could only have like one kid and they wanted to have a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember feeling like, no, like, how can they
Mm-hmm.
do this? So I would go around anytime that I saw like a little Asian girl, be like, you can come home with me if you want to. And my mom asked me one day, she's like, why do you keep telling people they can come home? I'm like, Mom, I don't want them to throw her away. And she's
Ah,
like, what? And I like started telling like this book. They like throw the little girls away. And that created this kind of conversation where as I got older, I'm like, I'm gonna adopt someone because I don't want to. Like it was always a
yeah.
thing in me. And as I continue to get older, I and moved more by it because I realized all we want, and again, it could go back to adopted, biological, as kids, all that we truly want, sorry about that, is to be loved and to be heard and seen and to have obviously the normal needs met, but
Mhm.
going above and beyond those emotional needs. And I had it from my mom that overcompensated that my dad didn't give
Mhm.
it, but I always lacked that from him. And it was like almost reading these books, I was able to internalize like, oh, let me kind of take this pain and turn it into something beautiful.
Mhm.
And I think the universe continues to put people in my path where it's like adoption comes up and I'm just like, wow. And I'm
Mhm.
just, I'm sure it wasn't easy. There has to be a lot like there, but what a beautiful way of finding your daughter. Like I know that no, it's not always felt like that, but it's just I it's such a beautiful gift because even though she's not your biological daughter, there's on some level you can relate to her with what she's going
Mhm.
through versus like if someone else would have adopted her that didn't go through that, there's that other layer of disconnect, but you can
Right.
actually see and like hear her pain. So it's
Mhm.
just
Yeah, definitely. And she teaches me so much about my own adoption, just watching her process. So absolutely, it's been a gift.
that is so incredible. How is the dynamic between your son, her and you? Because obviously there's a difference there.
Yeah, it's good. We're lucky that both kids are very kind. Excuse me, kind, and they wouldn't have naturally been friends because they're very different,
Okay.
but they're very kind to each other, and so yeah, and my relationship, I say he's very much like me personality wise, so we get along really well, and but so we have a different relationship and she and I, we're both female, so we've got that, and we both share this adoption journey together.
Yeah. Oh, that's so incredible. Well, I know that we're about to wrap it up. Um, Before we go into where everyone can find you and your beautiful thing, with everything going on right now, knowing everything, if we can go back to February
Mhm.
and you can give yourself some advice for the rest of the year, what would it be?
It would be to nurture the connections with my friends, to make sure that even during this terrible time of having to socially distant, to not to work harder, I guess, even at the connections.
I love that. I saw that you had a friend, you guys went out to, I think it was like lunch on Instagram that you posted, and you were just very grateful that
Mm-hmm.
she took the time out. So I wanted to just make a note on that, that with what you were just saying, it's true. This time is an invitation to kind of connect on a deeper level and find different ways. But where can people find you if they want to work with you as a life
Sure.
coach, or if they just want to stalk you like I did? I mean, I'll stay in this world.
Well, it's easy to find me because, like I said, I'm an oversharer. So I'm on all social media. My business is called an Imperfectly Perfect Life, a mouthful. And so that's the name on Facebook and Instagram. Also, the book is The 50/50 Friendship Flow. And that, you see, none of these names, I didn't work with a marketer with any of these names because they're hard to remember. But uh, the book can be also found on my website and on Amazon. And that is, again, An Imperfectly Perfect Life.
Perfect. And then do you have any projects that you're working on that you want to share with us, or everything's just kind of just under wraps right now?
Well, my mess to messages Zoom, I'm writing a second book using those messages. So that's in the works and hopefully out by next year. But that I gained so much from that. I can't wait to share the messages with everyone.
Oh man, I cannot wait for that book. Just the little two things that you shared with us
Mhm.
today. It's all so much gold. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your incredible day. Are you doing anything
Yep.
fun now? Are you gonna go party? You're always doing something on Instagram. I'm like expecting you to be like, yeah, I'm gonna go party now.
We have a company over here in Seattle called Rainy Day Picnics, and they're going to come out and set up a clear tent in my front yard. So it's just my husband and two kids and I. They'll set up a picnic for us, and so we'll have a picnic dinner in our front
Oh,
yard, which is perfect for 2020 and all of the socialization requirements or non-requirements that we have. But yeah, a picnic under a tent in my front yard tonight.
oh, that is so beautiful. Oh my
You'll,
God.
you'll see it on Instagram.
I was like, am I going to? Because I'll probably be there. What did she eat? What is everyone doing? Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful time on your picnic and that you enjoy, that you have a great rest of your day, and that it continues to bless you like you're blessing everyone else with your wisdom. Um,
Thank you.
so grateful for you and everything that you've put out in the world. And I can't wait to keep up with your journey.
Thank you. I'm so appreciative of connecting with you.
Thank you. Well, I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. I like forget sometimes what day it is. And we'll talk soon. I'll email
Okay.
you just so that you know when this goes out and everything.
Sounds
Awesome.
good.
Bye.